Get ready for a story. It's heartbreaking and honestly pretty messed up.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into the story of Renee Marsden,
Okay.
a young woman who took her own life after getting caught up in a really elaborate online catfishing scheme. You sent us a YouTube video about Renee from True Crime Central.
Oh, wow.
And it really gets you thinking about the dark side of the internet.
Mm.
Like, what even IS the internet these days,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So what's fascinating about this case is how it goes beyond like typical catfishing. You know,
Yeah.
it's a seriously chilling example of how people can manipulate online relationships.
Right.
Like for control and abuse. And it
Yeah.
can have some devastating real-world consequences.
Exactly. We're not just talking about some random internet troll here. This was a long-term thing.
Yeah.
A complex scheme orchestrated by someone Renee actually thought was her best friend, Camilla.
Camilla?
And get this, she made up this completely fake persona named Braden, supposedly a guy in prison.
Oh, wow.
And Renee ended up falling for him.
It's classic coercive control. You know, like we see in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
But it's like playing out in the digital world.
Yeah.
Camilla, through this Braden guy, could control Renee's emotion.
Oh, wow.
And isolate her from her support system. It's like a psychological prison, but built with text messages and fake profiles.
To understand how deep this really goes, we need to start with Renee's relationship with her first love, Angus. They were young and in love. They even drafted up this love contract,
Oh, wow.
kind of playfully outlining their dreams of a family and a Labrador.
Oh,
But Angus believes that Camilla interfered in their relationship.
really?
Yeah, and he thinks that she ultimately drove them apart. He saw firsthand how Camilla's behavior negatively impacted Renee's mental well-being, and that created a space for this Braden guy to enter the picture.
So she was vulnerable?
Oh, exactly.
Oh, wow.
And Camilla introduces this totally made-up Braden character, saying that he's in prison for manslaughter
Oh, my gosh.
and can only communicate via text.
So no calls?
No video chats.
None. She
Oh.
even made up elaborate reasons why Renee couldn't see him. Like that he gave up visitation rights so he could get a shorter sentence.
This isolation is such a crucial part of coercive control.
Yeah,
By limiting Renee's contact with the outside world,
right,
Camilla could manipulate her perceptions
right.
and control the whole narrative.
Yeah.
It's a seriously effective tactic that abusers use to gain power and make the victim dependent on them.
And Braden doesn't just isolate Renee. He becomes really controlling and abusive in his messages.
Oh, no.
There's even this one incident where he lashes out at Renee's mother, Teresa, calling her an unfit mother just because she interacted with Angus on Facebook.
Oh, my God.
Like, what?
It's a way to manipulate Renee into seeing her own family as the enemy
Yeah.
and isolating her even further, making her more reliant on Braden for emotional support.
Right.
This is where the emotional abuse starts to really take a toll.
And it gets worse. Camilla,
Oh.
as Braden, convinces Renee to get a tattoo of his name on her chest.
A tattoo.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like a physical manifestation of the psychological hold she had over Renee.
The tattoo speaks volumes.
Right.
It really shows how much Renee believed in this made-up relationship.
Yeah.
And how much power Camilla had over her.
This whole web of deception starts to unravel after Renee tragically takes her own life. And her younger brother Luke finds her old phone. He uses a $100 app to crack the code.
Really?
Yeah. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So this wasn't just like any app.
Right.
It probably exploited weaknesses in older phone software,
Yeah.
which shows that even with all our tech today, security can be fragile.
Yeah, you always got to update your software.
Yeah.
And have strong passwords, too.
Good point. Anyway, Luke unlocks the phone and finds thousands of messages
Wow.
between Renee and Braden, and also messages between Renee and Camilla.
Oh, so he has all the messages.
Yeah.
And the key here is that Luke noticed a pattern.
Okay.
Whenever communication from Braden would start messaging, Camilla would start messaging, and vice versa.
Oh. This was a huge red flag.
Yeah.
It suggested that the same person was behind both identities.
Talk about a plot twist.
Yeah.
So they take this evidence to the police. And the police start digging deeper. They actually managed to find the real person in the photos that Camilla was using for Braden.
Oh, wow.
And this is where Camilla's deception becomes super clear. The guy in the photo, Cameron Lang, had nothing to do with any of this.
Nothing.
Nope.
Wow.
This proved that she had made this whole persona up from scratch. The level of detail is just mind-blowing. But before we go any further, I think you should pause for a second and let all that sink in.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process. The manipulation,
Yeah.
the betrayal. What are your initial thoughts?
What strikes me is how calculated Camilla's deception was. and how effectively she used coercive control to isolate and manipulate Renee.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chilling reminder that manipulation can happen even in seemingly close friendships,
Yeah.
especially online where it's easy to fake your identity.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder who you can trust in the digital world. This is definitely something to think about. We'll get into what happened next and the fallout from this intricate web of lies right after this. So we know that Camilla was behind this whole scheme, but here's where it gets even more complicated. The legal side of things. You'd think with a case this messed up,
Yeah.
leading to someone taking their own life, that there'd be a clear path to justice, right?
Well, that's where things get tricky. At the time in Australia, the legal definition of catfishing was mainly about financial stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like if someone stole money.
Hmm.
And since there was no money exchange between Renee and Camilla,
Right.
it was super hard to prosecute.
Wait, so all the emotional and psychological damage to Renee and her family, that didn't matter to the law?
Sadly, not in the same way as financial harm. It's a tragic gap in the law
Yeah.
that Renee's case really brought to light,
Mm.
and it's something her family has been fighting to change.
So even though the coroner said that Camilla's deception was directly responsible for Renee's death, he couldn't recommend criminal charges.
Exactly. It shows how limited the laws are when it comes to online manipulation and psychological abuse.
And to make matters worse, Camilla was granted immunity
Wow.
in exchange for testifying at the inquest. But even with immunity, she denied doing anything wrong.
Really?
Yeah, she even said that Renee was a willing participant in this whole Braden thing to hide a supposed lesbian relationship.
It's classic deflection. Even when there's tons of evidence, abusers don't take responsibility.
Yeah.
In Jamila's case, it just added more pain and injustice for Renee's family.
It's just unimaginable. And this is what pushed them to fight for legal reform, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been pushing for what's been called Renee's Law
Okay.
to make catfishing a crime, especially when it leads to serious harm, like psychological trauma or suicide.
Their goal is to change the legal definition of catfishing
Okay.
so that it includes emotional and psychological damage,
Mm-hmm.
not just financial exploitation. It's a fight to make the law recognize the real and devastating consequences of online manipulation.
But changing laws is complicated. What are some of the challenges in getting Renee's Law passed?
Well, one challenge is defining what the law actually covers.
Okay.
Like, how do you tell the difference between harmless online role-playing
Mm-hmm.
and deliberate manipulation that really hurts someone?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's tough.
It's a tricky legal question.
And then there's enforcement. The internet is so big and people can be anonymous.
Right.
How do you even find the people who do this stuff? Especially when they use fake names and things like VPNs.
You've hit on a key point. Proving intent and causation in these cases can be super difficult.
Yeah.
The digital world often doesn't have the solid evidence you need in a normal criminal case.
So it's not just about changing the law. It's about having good investigative techniques
Right.
and resources to handle these complex cybercrimes.
Absolutely. And then there's education and prevention, too.
Yeah.
How do we teach people, especially young people, how to be safe online?
Right.
And how to recognize the warning signs of manipulation?
That's a huge piece of the puzzle. We need to empower people to protect themselves online, just like we teach them about physical safety in real life.
Exactly. It's a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
It needs legal reform, technological advancements,
Yeah.
and a change in how society thinks about online safety.
Cases like Renee's are so important. They show us the dark side of the internet
Yeah.
and force us to face some hard truths about online safety and accountability.
And it's not just about protecting individuals. It's
Yeah.
about protecting everyone's digital well-being. The internet is such a big part of our lives now. We need to make sure it's a place where people can connect and interact safely.
You know what really gets to me in all of this? Is that Camilla showed no remorse. Even during her testimony, she kept blaming Renee, saying she was willingly part of this whole thing.
That lack of accountability is really disturbing. It shows a lack of empathy. Like, some people don't understand the impact of their actions online. It's like they think the internet is a consequence-free zone.
It's really disheartening. And it makes me think about the ripple effects of this trauma, not just on Renee, but on her family and loved ones.
You're right. What Camilla didn't just devastate Renee, it shattered her whole family. Think about her younger brother, Luke. He was only 13 when he lost his sister. And he's the one who found out the truth about Camilla's deception.
I can't even imagine what he went through. To lose your sister in such a horrible way, and then to have to listen to Camilla lie and blame her.
It's heartbreaking. It shows how the trauma of online manipulation goes way beyond the victim.
Yeah.
The pain spreads out. affecting families, friends, entire communities.
And we can't forget about Renee's first love, Angus. He lost the woman he loved, and then had to watch her memory get tarnished by Camilla's lies.
His story shows the huge sense of loss and betrayal that comes with catfishing.
Right.
He lost his future with Renee.
Yeah.
And now he has to live with that loss, knowing it was all because of someone's manipulation. It's a lot to carry.
It's a reminder that what we do online can have consequences that are just as real and devastating as in the physical world.
Exactly. And it shows how urgently we need more awareness, education, and legal protections
Yeah.
to fight online manipulation
Yeah.
and support the people who have been hurt by it.
This isn't just about catfishing. It's about loss and grief and the lasting impact of trauma. It's about the need for empathy and accountability and a fundamental change in how we approach online safety and well-being.
You said it perfectly. This is a human story, a tragedy that makes us ask some really big questions about the ethical and societal implications of our digital lives.
And it gives us a lot to think about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But before we get too philosophical, I think it's important to bring this back to our listeners and talk about some practical takeaways. What can we learn from Renee's story? How can we protect ourselves and the people we care about from this kind of manipulation? We'll explore that right after this.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Renee's story and all the legal stuff.
Yeah.
But now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about what this means for you listening. How can we use what we learned from this case to stay safe online?
That's a good question, especially since our online lives are so connected to our real lives now.
Exactly. We're not living in separate worlds anymore. So let's get practical. What are some red flags we should watch out for when we meet people online?
Okay, well, inconsistency is a big one. Like if someone's story keeps changing, or if
Right.
they act differently online than they do in person.
Like with Renee and Braden, he always had a reason why they couldn't talk on the phone or video chat. That should have been a huge warning sign.
Exactly. If someone always avoids meeting in person or having a real conversation, that's a red flag. Got it. So inconsistencies and avoiding real-life interaction. What about sharing personal info online? How much is too much?
Always be careful, especially with people you don't know well. It's basic online safety, but it's important. Don't share stuff like your address, banking info, or passwords.
Makes sense. And this goes for all online platforms, right?
Yep.
Social media, dating apps, even online games.
All of them. And it's not just about what you share directly. Be careful about what you post publicly, too.
Okay.
Think before you share your daily routine travel plans
Yeah.
or anything that someone could use to target you.
So be smart about what we share and who we share it with.
Exactly. Another thing is to trust your gut.
Yeah.
If something feels off about someone online, don't ignore it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that little voice inside that says something's not right.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to talk to someone you trust. If you're unsure about an online relationship, a friend, family member, a therapist, they can give you another perspective.
Yeah, having that support system is so important.
Absolutely. And if you think you or someone you know is being catfished, there are resources out there. You can report it to the website or app where it's happening. Sometimes the police can even get involved. But like we talked about, the laws are still changing.
Well, it's important to remember you're not alone. But let's talk about prevention. What can we do to make the online world safer?
Well, education is key, especially for young people. They're often the most vulnerable to this kind of manipulation.
Yeah.
We need to talk openly and honestly about the dangers of catfishing. Parents, educators, friends, they can all help young people understand the risks and learn to spot the warning signs.
It's like we need to teach kids digital street smarts, along with don't talk to strangers.
That's a great way to put it. We also need to teach them critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Encourage them to question what they see online, to check their sources, and to be wary of anyone who seems too good to be true.
Because usually if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. And finally, this is something we can all do. Let's be kind and respectful online.
Yeah.
Think about how our words and actions affect others.
It's a good reminder that even though we're online, there's a real person on the other side.
Exactly. We can all do our part to build a safer online world by being mindful, respectful, and looking out for each other.
Renee's story is so powerful. It's a tragic reminder of the dangers online, but it also shows us how to be more aware and cautious.
Yeah.
And how to support each other.
Well said. Let's use what we've learned to create a safer and more compassionate online world.
I totally agree. That wraps up our deep dive into this case. We hope this has given you some things to think about. Stay safe, everyone.